because if you can get them to watch the whole video, then, I think they're that much more likely to actually click. But if it's a 2-minute ad and they lose interest at 30 seconds, it's like you want to leave them wanting more, right? It's like they want to learn more. It's like, okay, that was really cool. It's already over. Like, let me find out more.
Hi, Philip here. Welcome back to Careers 2.0. My guest today is a master of one skill, one content type, and one massive sales channel. When I was researching Dan, a guitar virtuoso and a teacher, there was one review of his course that I found very telling. It said, pros, clear teaching, very concise, and straight to the point. Cons, none. And I think it's like our interview today. Cons, none. Enjoy. I want to start a little bit about industry itself and music and your art in general. You're doing it for a long time. I have not known much about it at all. So before this conversation, I tried to do a little bit of research, ask my friends who are knowledgeable. And what keeps coming up is that the genre of music is changing over the last years. And I want to know from you, do you see that? Do you see that the music is changing? And from the perspective of a teacher, do the needs of the customers change? They want to learn different things. It's not shredding and solos anymore, but something else, for example. How do you see it?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. But yes, absolutely, genres are changing. I mean, with the fragmentation of all the different genres that, even just since the internet, that's changed so much, where you get all these subgenres of subgenres. And so maybe in the mainstream now, there's not a lot of room for the sort of stuff that I do, but you have quite a large number of people who play, who want to play or play styles of music that use these types of techniques. And as that type of genre changes, especially in terms of like shred guitar or kind of, like electric guitar where you're doing some kind of difficult techniques or let's say flashy kind of techniques, that just is constantly evolving. So one thing about it where the part of what draws people to that, part of even the marketing really, like being in my position, is using techniques that are kind of, what you might think of as cutting edge. It's like kind of something nobody's seen that one before, or it's something like what's new, but maybe with a little twist. So I think that from the customer's perspective, they're hearing this new music, they're seeing these new videos from these new bands and these new or just artists who are evolving over time, and they then definitely want to have access to those techniques. And I think one of the things that, as a teacher of this kind of thing, like a lot of these techniques look so incredibly difficult to play, yet actually aren't maybe a fraction, as difficult as they seem. And that's kind of the trick to it. There's a lot of these techniques is that it's all about the it's a show-stopping technique. It's designed to look as impressive as possible. And so for the internet, of course, that's how you get the engagement, right? It's like you put that front and center. So people are just constantly innovating with different ways to make guitar look more crazy, basically more intense. And so, yeah, I that's one thing that's actually a major part of both how I think in terms of advertising and when developing a product.
Do you see that the products that you have created years ago become obsolete, or you build up upon it? So the cutting edge stuff that has to be always new and you have to always keep creating, or the old stuff is a foundation, or maybe it's still selling pretty well?
Yeah, that's another great question. So I have some products that I made that I think that just have continued to do well since I've made them, which I think, in one case, because it's literally just a collection of popular classical music transcribed for the electric guitar. So that's never gonna go out of style. But another one is just that it's a little bit more of a fundamental approach to a technique that's always going to be relevant, which would be sweep picking. And this problem is part of also how I kind of designed the course to try to make it not allow it to become obsolete. So by breaking down and teaching a method that makes what you're learning applicable to new techniques, and also giving the tools in order to help them innovate themselves. So it's it's kind of a central theme to my courses is to try to take a particular subject, a particular technique, let's say, specialize in that for a whole course, and then figure out a way to break it down in such a way where they're not just learning some patterns and learning some specific versions of this technique, but they're kind of learning the inner workings of it and how that applies across any different, many different applications, or maybe every possible application at a fundamental level. And so from that perspective, for the most part, I've found that the courses that have done well have continued to do well since I put them out. At the same time, which is great. Obviously, but also one thing that I try to do is to always kind of put my own unique approach and perspective into it in such a way that for people who aren't already familiar with my work, it's always going to be a new approach to them, and I think that helps as well. So in the marketing, in the sales material, the description, it's always like, okay, I haven't tried this approach before, and so I think that helps kind of protect it against becoming obsolete, for at least for some time.
Yeah, you mentioned that somewhere that teaching did wonders for your own craft, and I really want to know, how does teaching improve your own craft?
There's a lot of ways that it does, I would say. I mean, I used to teach private lessons, and probably the first way that I recognized that it was helping me so much was just through, even teaching kids, because like back in my 20s, I taught private lessons for about 12 years. And starting when I was maybe 18 and just up until around, when I turned 30 or so. And what I found was that every single student that I had would interpret what I was teaching them in a different way. And they would either why they were getting it wrong, like why they were having a problem with it, or connections they were making that I hadn't thought of before. It just forced me to see it in a different perspective. So with each student, I had a different perspective. I was kind of forced to have this different perspective in order to be able to reach them, as a student. And over time, that just gave me this much broader understanding of guitar in general, and music in a lot of cases. But moving forward to making these kind of specialized courses, of course, one thing is I'm trying to make something that is for a specific audience. I'm making it for people. I know what they want to learn. I know what, and it's also something that I'm personally interested in and have some expertise in. And so, and again, like I was saying, I want to make something that really will last, that has, something, kind of a special, ingredient to it. So just the fact of having to dig into that topic for so long and like really try to construct this course and bring it all together, it kind of forces these new perspectives. It causes me to make new connections. And of course, I'm then practicing, in different ways and practicing the exercises that I'm putting together. And I found that to be just incredibly beneficial. And then of course, getting feedback from students and getting or seeing their progress, or it's similarly, it's giving me new insight, I guess, or, oh, I missed, it's like somebody's, hey, you should have maybe gotten more into this. And it might be something that I never even thought of as a musician before. And so then I get into that and, for the next course, and it just broadens, my horizons, I guess.
You mentioned one-on-one coaching, and I wonder, what is the trade-off of learning such a practical art like guitar playing online?
Yeah, so, if we're talking about one-on-one, because of course you could do one-on-one online as well versus the courses. But if we were to compare one-on-one to the courses,
mm-hmm.
That's a really good question. I think the difference is, one of the big differences, of course, is that when a course like this is put together, it's specialized in a very particular area. So if you were seeking a guitar teacher, you'd need to find a guitar teacher who specialized in that area, right, to get the same
mm-hmm.
sort of benefit. I think that's one of the benefits of using a course. So if that's your intention, if that's your desire. Also, I think there's, like myself, I don't do very well personally learning maybe in a class environment or from a teacher. I'm better at just kind of learning from maybe a course or a book or something like that. And actually, my own approach to learning, I inject into the courses in a way so that people who are more like me in that way can really benefit from that. But I would say that, like, obviously one-on-one, huge benefits, because you can actually go in each week or whenever your time is, and they can manually help you and answer your questions and pointed out too. So that like the courses will never, can never take the place of that. But I've also found, one of the things that I do with my courses is I offer the teachers, if you buy my courses, to be able to use the course to teach their students, just under the condition that they tell the student where it's from and, leave like the website or whatever on it. And I've found a number of teachers, will use my courses as part of their curriculum, let's say with their own students. And I'm sure they do that with a lot of other courses online as well. So I think the big trade-off is obviously you're losing that one-on-one connection, but then you're getting to learn from, with the course, you're getting to learn either from a guitarist who you want to play like specifically, like, because I'm, as a musician, I have a lot of music released. And so, a lot of people want to learn like specifically what I'm doing, and what is it that my approach is. And so, obviously going to another teacher, another guitarist, they wouldn't have that information. So I think that's another part as well.
I want to stop on one thing that you mentioned about the specificity of the knowledge and the course that you're providing on one technique, for example. What I see is that people often have some specific knowledge and they have some amazing craft, but they struggle to teach it because it's difficult to convey information in a simple, understandable way. Did you find some techniques or tips for people who have some knowledge and want to teach it to others, to do it in a way that can be applicable to any level, any type of person?
But yeah, that's a really good question. I'm gonna have to think for a second. Yes, that's one thing that, teaching in private lessons helped with me a lot. To kind of have that interplay. I would recommend doing some of that to get that idea. But really, it's about trying to find a way. It's about analogies, right? It's like finding a way that what does the average person already know that this can relate to. So with me, it's always trying to find this way. And I think any teacher who, is, teaches something special like this comes up with a similar method. But the main thing is just trying to figure out how this information relates to, something that's common knowledge. And surprisingly, and that's one of the things too, it's interesting to me that's kind of over the years, like getting into all of this. And because, learning, composition, guitar, different instruments, getting into making these courses, teaching, doing, recording and mixing and all that. It's all these different areas, but there are certain patterns of information, I guess, that kind of like if you get really good at one thing, then it's easier to get good at another thing. And so it can seem like teaching in itself is a skill. So I don't want to get too off on a tangent here, but I think that if you can find the way that things connect, it's like, if you can find how, like the simplest way that this can be boiled down, and then how can that be, what's the analogy that people can relate to with that? And so that's like, that's something that I really put a lot of time into when designing my courses, is trying to find that way of taking this what could be considered very complicated information and then boiling it down to the simplest possible version and creating a foundation from that, using some analogies, and then building, on that. And I have a course, the Infinite Shred Method, and this was inspired in part by this idea of boiling information down. And so like the whole method of teaching it is based on boiling down the repeating patterns that occur on the fretboard of the guitar, which if you think about like all of the diatonic scales, for example, the modes all the way across the fretboard, it seems like it's just an incredible amount of information. But in reality, it's only made up of 3 different patterns of 3 notes that repeat across, the whole fretboard. And then you can, there's 12 different keys, but you can just shift that information up to a different root note. And now you know the entire fretboard. And that's basically it's like you take this, what seems to be unimaginably complicated information, and it's actually quite simple if you know the way to look at it. And a lot of students taking that course, that's one of their main things that they enjoy about it so much, or have benefited from it so much. And so I really think that works. So I think if you can find the way to the simplest version of whatever it is, and not simple like, you're talking to a little kid, but simple as in, functionally simple. It contains the information. It might have to be a step-by-step process, but whatever, and that's easier to relate. Because if you start with technical jargon, if you start with, all this you get into all this complicated stuff, it's just going to go over their heads. So if they're not, already well versed. So yeah, I think that would be that would be my advice, is to try to find the simplest way to talk about something and try to find how it relates to something that would be common knowledge.
Do you think that you have to be an expert in what you do in order to teach people, or you just have to be a few steps ahead of the people that you actually want to teach and it's good enough?
That's another great question. Yeah, I would say that you could be a teacher if you're really good at teaching. Then you don't even necessarily need to know that much about what you're teaching. If you have access, especially today with like the internet, just Google or something. I mean, obviously you have to have reliable sources. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but I think that a really good teacher could do that, as long as they're taking the time to formulate their course ahead of time. Even if they're teaching a class, or or designing a course, if they take the time to really understand it, take the time to really and I, like you said, a few steps ahead. I think that if you develop that skill of teaching and understanding how to convey information in an effective way to the general audience that would be consuming it, then I would say that you don't necessarily. It helps to be an expert because you don't have to do as much research. But I would say definitely you wouldn't have to be if you already developed this ability for teaching.
Okay, then let me put you on the spot. What makes a good teacher then?
Well, I think I think it's important to be able to put yourself in the mind, or into the perspective of the student. I think that's really important. So having that ability to empathize in that way and kind of imagine what that student's experience would be based on different levels of knowledge, pre-knowledge. Let's say okay, well, this student has zero knowledge ahead of time, and what are how are they going to be interpreting this when they see it? Like and if you were that student, so I think having that and I prefer to say developing that ability is something that I think is invaluable, critical, for a good teacher. But also it's really important, I think, for a good teacher to be able to take criticism and be able to listen to students and hear that feedback. I think that there's a lot of people who are just tremendous experts at what they do and have great teaching skills. But all of us creative people are super sensitive people, right? We hate feedback, we hate criticism, right? And so it takes a little practice to get to be able to handle that in a way that's useful. And it's not always presented in the nicest way, but I think developing a little bit of a maybe separating yourself a little bit from that, kind of taking a bird's eye view, being able to hear that criticism, judge that criticism, and incorporate that. I think those are two characteristics that really make a great teacher. If you're not willing to hear the criticism, then how can you grow, right? It's like then that element, because you're not hearing the experience of the people that you're trying to teach to. So I do think that the ability to really connect to the student, even if it's from this kind of abstract sense, it's like there's going to be some student I'll never meet watching this course I'm making. You kind of imagine what that ability to do that, I think is really key.
How do you get feedback then? Because you put your stuff online, so some of it, like YouTube comments or something, is constructive feedback, and some of it probably borders into hate.
Right. Sure.
Do you seek it in any case? You still want as much feedback and as much information as possible to build your own skills and be better? Or you sometimes okay, I cannot handle this anymore?
My YouTube channel is a good place for me to get feedback and comments, simply because I'm not very consistent with uploading to YouTube, something that I intend to be doing a new strategy with this year. So my audience on there has mostly it's Facebook where people are seeing my stuff. But on YouTube, the people who are there are people who are intentionally staying there. So I don't really get a lot of negative comments there, which is kind of a bad sign because it means it's not necessarily reaching new people there. But at least within the first couple of days when I'm looking at those comments, that's a good way to get kind of a positive. I don't have to worry too much about getting some sort of hate. Other than that, typically people will send emails who've taken the courses, which I think is maybe the best way, because somebody who's willing to take the time to do that is really also taking the time to think about it. They're coming at you with a real either like, praising something about it and then, suggesting something or criticizing something, but it's coming from not just from like an emotional, reactive place. And I think that's better. Facebook, when I'm in the mood and I feel comfortable, maybe reading some very nasty things, that's another, I'll sometimes go there, but that's where I usually reach new people, especially through advertising. So that sometimes I can get some very, very nasty comments. So kind of have to make sure I'm in the right mood to interact with that, try to stay positive about it. And then sometimes, like, because these people have emailed me, I certain students that have given me really good feedback in the past, I can then sometimes email them and ask their opinions on things. And I plan to do surveys for my next course. For example, I plan to do a survey through my mailing list, which I haven't done before, but I think that would be that's going to be a very effective way to do it.
For sure. You mentioned the social media platforms and advertising, so let's go there because that's fascinating. So when we see people creating content like yours these days, is mostly YouTube or TikTok even, or Instagram, and your audience, over 250,000, I think, is on Facebook. Is it historically because that's where you started and that's where you were growing, or is it because advertising and Facebook being still the best advertisement platform?
I would say advertising is a huge part of it. I think there's two factors. Advertising, because I've just been advertising on there now for years, is a huge part. Although I don't really get new likes through ads anymore, so I don't know. That kind of stopped a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago. It's like very rare that new likes or follows from the page come through ads. So I don't know if that's a change in the way Facebook does it, but also Facebook, at least, and it's kind of hit or miss. All the social media platforms, algorithms start to diminish your ability to reach your own audience. But what I've found is that, at least for a time, Facebook was really allowing the followers that I had to see, to be exposed to what I was posting, and that allowed this sort of really a very, very rapid growth of followers, which hasn't changed that much in several years. So I would say it's a little bit of a combination of the two. Like YouTube was a very slow growth. And then by the time it started really picking up steam and, like on average getting 10, 20,000 views for an upload initially, which now seems so small, but back then, it seemed pretty significant. But it's like now if I just post a video to YouTube, like right around the time that happened, they did something, they changed something. And now, even though I have, let's say 50-something thousand subscribers, maybe 2,000 see an upload. So, now I'm not very good at keeping up with. I'm not really good with social media. I'm not like I should have hired somebody a long time ago to do this stuff for me. So like I don't ask people to ring the bell or subscribe, and I don't really consistently upload. It kind of like I'm more, I make songs. I write songs and music videos, host those when I make them, and then when I'm making courses, and then in between I'll sometimes. So I'm very inconsistent with that, which I strongly recommend against, to anyone watching this. Because this is something I was just talking about with somebody the other day, but my current platform, everything that I put together and my current audience, if I were to, there's a few things, if I could just simply get myself to let's say make a short video demonstrating something, teaching something each week for YouTube and Facebook. And if I were to start putting things on TikTok and doing all that, I may not need to do much advertising anymore. And so that's something that I hope to do this year. I hope to get more consistent with that stuff.
How much of your purchases right now on an average day come from organic stuff and organic content versus advertising? Is it most of your business?
On average, like on a regular day, I would say definitely advertising is where most of these sales are coming from. On a regular day. If I'm running a sale to my mailing list or something, then, it's like 80-90% comes from the mailing list. So it's a little, although advertising picks up at that time because obviously they're seeing, and one trick that I found that really, really helps is to make a new thumbnail for the products that I'm putting on sale that very clearly has like a 50% off or whatever, and then a date for when the sale is going to end on the thumbnail. And the reason why I found that, and that changed everything when I figured that out, because you can use the countdown timer, which is an amazing feature of Sellfy. and it can show when the sale ends. But there's so many websites online that pretend to have a countdown timer, right? It's like when you click, it starts this timer. You can refresh and the timer restarts. So there's so many of these kind of fake come on-y kind of things. So when you actually have it in the image that it says the date that it's going to end, and then you have a special picture with like it looks like a sticker. It says 50% off. I found that to really be a game changer in terms of sales, especially when I'm running a sale and how I get sales through ads, like to new and acquiring new customers. That because it's a little bit of a trust thing, but it also it's more, it grabs their attention a little bit more.
But that happens already on the landing page, right? On your store. So what kind of information is important in the advertisement itself? What kind of image or text is important to make people click so they can see this timer?
Okay, so this is an area that may not apply too much to other people, and I apologize for that, just because of the specific thing that I do. But the ads that I found for me that work the best are really just clips of techniques, like the most compelling, the most engagement worthy, the type of thing that's going to stop somebody scrolling. It's like kind of just condensed usually without me saying anything, with very little text. Maybe at the end, it just has the name of the product, and the address or something. But it's really just kind of a barrage, I'll say, of very eye-catching, flashy techniques that are being taught in the course, or are somehow related to the product, depending on what type of product it is. But yeah, so really just having something that just and certainly that can translate in other ways to other areas. But I haven't thought a lot about that, so I'd have to think about it. But certainly the idea, if you were to boil that down, it's just people are looking for something, right? There's people are interested. It's like in this case, they see that and they want to be able to do that. And so, if you can just kind of show that to them, and then at least they'll click, and you can then have the opportunity to sell them on the product. But I think any way that you can reach people with something that's eye-catching, like thinking of how the customer or the potential customer is, they're scrolling through their feed, something appears, you get 2 seconds, maybe a second to stop there, you grab their attention. It's like, and with the video ads, I use only video ads. You have that autoplay. So, if the first 2 seconds is just like an introduction text or something, they're just going to scroll right by it. But if it's like some crazy thing, then, it might stop them. And I started wearing more, colorful shirts and using different types of guitars, and, figuring out different ways to kind of, so my ads don't all look the same. But anything where you can really interrupt somebody's, focus while they're scrolling, I think is very helpful. And then if you can keep their attention, and I try to keep the ads short, so 20, 30-second video, because if you can get them to watch the whole video, then, I think they're that much more likely to actually click. But if it's a 2-minute ad and they lose interest at 30 seconds, it's like you want to leave them wanting more, right? It's like they want to learn more. It's like, okay, that was really cool. It's already over. Let me find out more.
Yeah, I wanted to say that actually I think that applies to almost every industry and every type of ad. You're not just showing what you can do, but you're actually selling sort of the promise. You're selling you can do it as well, right?
That's exactly right. So now I do have the same type of ad, but I'll have it be as a square ad with bars on the top and bottom that contain text. So like the name of the product, and then the what it teaches, or how many exercises, whatever. It's like whatever is the type of thing they'd be looking for. And then that text doesn't change during the 30 seconds. So at any point they click the ad, it doesn't really matter if they start at the beginning, halfway through, or towards the end. It's like whenever they start watching it, the text, they're always seeing the important text on the top and bottom. And then they're always seeing that, of course, they're going to be more distracted by the guitar playing. But once they're thinking, hey, I want to do that, and the headline of the ad is normally something like that is letting them know it's like that you can do this too, something along that line. So absolutely.
Can you take us a little bit behind the scenes of your advertising strategy? Do they run by now on autopilot basically, and you have a system that works and you get developed over the years and it just goes? Or because the changes that happen all the time, do you need to rediscover and reapply? And also, do you do it all by yourself, or you have some help?
So I do everything pretty much by myself. although I was lucky that one of my closest friends growing up got into marketing. So in the early days, that was very helpful. Although he got more into SEO marketing, so there were some limits there, but it really helped me with a lot of stuff at the beginning. We got a minute, I'll tell the story of how I got into doing Facebook advertising.
I think we have a minute or two, absolutely.
I basically back when I was teaching, I lived up in the Sacramento area, and of course I was working very hard on my music career, and I made some kind of sponsorship type things with a couple companies, and I got to perform in a couple different countries. I got to go to China and Germany, and it looked like things were really picking up, and it was really exciting. And then that kind of I made some connections down in this area where I live, Los Angeles area. And so anyway, I was getting ready to move, and I didn't want to teach private lessons anymore. I wanted to kind of move on from that. And so I kind of worked out some connections for doing kind of sponsored videos for people, or kind of demonstrating a guitar and amplifier. And so when I first moved down here, that was what I was doing, and it was enough. It was like paying the bills, but I didn't really have any other. I mean, I was making like $100 from YouTube AdSense, which now, getting those views now, you'd probably be getting 20 cents. But anyway, I was getting like, a month or something like that, and, almost nothing. And then I had courses that I'd made with Metal Method, which is a kind of a legendary company. That was a big thing that when Doug Marks had contacted me back in like 2011. And so that was a little bit of income. It wasn't like a lot of money, but I was supplemental. And so I came down here, and I was kind of, paying the bills by doing these sponsored video type things. Something happened where it became clear that I wasn't going to be able to rely on this anymore. And so I had to try to figure out a way to monetize separately. And so I'd already created all these classical arrangements in like the metal style, where, I mean, really, I'm just taking, like a piece by Beethoven or somebody and directly translating it to like very little input from me, just trying to keep it as close to the real thing as possible. But for electric guitar and like kind of a metal band situation. And I made a number of these. So I decided to try see if I could sell like a package with the tabs for that. And so I'd already signed up with Sellfy before to sell like an album, but I hadn't done much with that. But I had some sales, and I had a mailing list through Sellfy at the time that I was able to sell some of those products. So I decided to get into, I was in this situation where the pressures were on me, and I wasn't sure how I was going to pay the rent the next month. So I tried, the Facebook advertising. I had about $20 to spend. That was about all I had. So I had to figure out how to make it profitable, not just you get what I mean. So I did a lot of trial and error with very small amounts of money over the course of about a month, and then I was able to start testing different prices, different ads, and all that, and eventually I actually started to make profit on it, and it was just enough to get me by with these other supplemental things, and so from album sales and those other courses I'd made. So anyway, so that was how I got started with it. That was, I don't know, 6 years ago or more. And since then, of course, I've learned a lot more about Facebook advertising. But back then, I had to almost be constantly, like, as vigilant as possible, changing ads, trying new things. You get this ad that just worked fantastically well, and then all of a sudden, it's not even making any sales anymore. And you'd have I found this weird, I don't know what you'd call it, but basically, I thought, okay, well, I'm making profit, spending this much money a day. So what if I should be able to like spend 10 times as much and make 10 times as much profit? So I tried to ramp it up and tried to scale it up in various different ways. And what I found was it always got to a point where, like, the higher I'd get, the lower relative to it. The profits would get lower. And there was 1 month where, and this was like astronomical for me at the time, where I had $10,000 in sales, but it's like, I don't have any money. Like, where did it all go? And I realized that because I got up to spending like $500 a day, which was, again, like a crazy amount of money for me at the time. But the ads were just paying for themselves, and I made like exactly zero profit. Didn't lose any money, thank God. I didn't really have any to lose, But so anyway, but moving forward, just testing and trying new things. And of course, Facebook advertising has gotten a lot better since then. But yeah, the ads now, I kind of just keep the same ads going almost indefinitely. And I used to check them every day. I used to, now I check them maybe once every couple months. So if I'm running a sale, I'll start a couple new ads. Every so often I'll go through and check it, but typically I don't have to do much with it. Kind of finding that sweet spot. And then if I notice sales start to come down a little bit, I'll then go and kind of maybe tweak a couple things, end a couple ads, start a couple new experiments, try a few tests, and pick and just keep the ones that are performing well. And yeah, amazingly, they'll last sometimes as long as like a year. I've had the same ads running, and then but if Facebook makes a change, sometimes I'll have to kind of redo everything. So maybe once a year, that might be a good way to put it. Maybe once every 6 months to a year, I'll have to either make a major overhaul or start from scratch.
Can you share with us the profit margin? Like how much do you earn per dollar spent?
It really depends, I guess, on the time of year. It depends on certain factors. It can vary pretty wildly. But my goal is to have to at least be making like 100% of what I'm spending. I think on average now, let me think. Like this last month was pretty good. It's quite a bit higher than that. It's quite maybe 300% or something. But it's important to find that sweet spot. It's important to find because it's like you'd think you could just scale that up, but there is sort of a limit. Having different products, having more ad videos, having different ads, of course, really helps. But it's pretty difficult to scale it up. I've found there really is like a ceiling for me with advertising, even though the potential market is in the tens of millions. I have like the audiences, and the algorithm on Facebook is so good at reaching the right people now. It's for some reason, and I've talked about this with people at Facebook, nobody seems to really understand exactly like why this works this way. Obviously, scaling is a problem in every industry, but it's a weird effect that maybe has to do something with the way the algorithm works, like in how it's spending your money when you're spending more. But it does seem that there's a point, and it's probably different for each person's, whatever their product is, whatever their audience that they're reaching is. But there seems to be a kind of a ceiling where once you go above that, there's a proportional diminishing of profit.
I noticed that your ads, your YouTube content, almost every video from the beginning, I think I found videos from 10 or 14 years ago. The style didn't really change. It's you playing the guitar with the focus clearly on the guitar, not on you, not on your face. You don't have any, and I wonder, does it put any stress on you as a creator because you're much more dependent on the quality of your music and your content rather than, I don't know, unboxing videos, reviews of gear, and so on and so forth?
Oh, I mean, I have chosen one of the most unnecessarily difficult areas for content creation. If you look at it from that perspective, where the amount of work that goes into a single video, where I could do something where I could spend 10 minutes and, do an improvised video like a blog, or do unboxing videos, maybe spend a couple hours a day doing that sort of thing. Yes. And I've thought about that a lot. Because it's sometimes like a video might take me, I have to invest 40, 100 hours into doing something, especially if I'm making like a song or a music video, which of course supports the business end. But in reality, it's, for me, the business is just supporting my ability to create the music that I want to create. Right. So that's kind of where the trade-off is. But even, I don't know, just as a creative person, it's hard for me to do things cynically, I guess. It's hard for me to approach something without it being from a real place of inspiration, without it being, I want to really, if I'm going to make a course, I'm not just trying to make money. It's like, I want to share something that's important to me. I want to reach people with it. I want to create something really of value that doesn't already exist. It's like, I don't want to just remake something and just be competing with, just to try to make some money. I want to create something that is new, that is representational of me and what I've learned, my own perspective, and that means something to me. And I think that in itself makes everything more fulfilling, but it also makes my ability to earn quite, it's quite limiting to that. But yeah, I prefer it. Obviously I prefer to make more money, but I don't think I would enjoy that type of lifestyle. I think it would be too it just wouldn't be for me. So I prefer to just put the real time. Like there's like I'm working on a song right now and a music video that the amount of time that's going to go into this, because granted, I'm doing everything myself. So because there's going to be animation in it, there's going to be there's kind of elaborate costumes and masks, and I even built the guitar for it, and it's incredibly in depth and complicated. But and the song itself is rather complicated. The composition, it's still in its kind of beginning stages, and so but to me that's the thing I love most.
But do you think that that's why people resonate with your product and your courses and your content? There's an ocean of products like yours probably in somewhere online, but people wait and buy from you for years, and maybe that's why, right? Because you
Right.
you don't just churn them out every week. You actually
Right.
spend
Yeah.
hundreds of hours.
Absolutely. I think that's a point that I think anybody can take, is that if you can stand out by simply really doing something you're passionate about and caring about what you're making. And and I do believe, not to like false modesty or something. I've gotten feedback. I do know that's something that keeps people coming back. So I know that's it's the sincerity of it. I guess it's I'm really trying to create something of value and something that's meaningful to me. And I think that's something that absolutely, because any area where you can make money, there's always going to be kind of a gold rush kind of thing. And you're going to get a lot of people maybe who might be creative people, but they haven't really explored their creativity yet. They just need to make money. And so they're just looking, what's the fastest, easiest way to make digital content, digital products? And the problem is everybody's doing that. So, if you don't have something of your own, something that, another thing is people try, I think, especially with the internet, how fragmented it is, the idea of trying to reach a general audience, unless you're like on the forefront of artificial intelligence or some, mainstream thing, and you're already like the big, person in that area, you don't want to be trying to reach a general audience. It's better to try to find people more like yourself who maybe and just a quick digression. I mean, there's products that I've made that I wished existed since, I was in high school. It's like things that I looked for that weren't on the market. And then I eventually made those products. You know what I'm saying? And I think, so I know that there's other people like me out there who wished those products existed. And so now they do, and I think that's something that can be really helpful to anybody starting out or experiencing the difficulty that everyone experiences when they're first doing something like this. Is if you can create, and this has been said before, this isn't my own idea, but creating what you wish, existed, but doesn't, filling that void, even if it only resonates with a relatively small group of people. We're talking about billions of people. 10 million people is a small group,
Let's dive in a little bit into your product that you mentioned. So you have cheap products for $2 and courses for hundreds that are on promotion often for like 50. How do you think about the smaller products versus the bigger products? Are you trying to sell first the cheaper ones, hopefully upsell people to the more expensive ones, or the opposite, and the second ones are just addition?
Most of my smaller products are really just like a single song tab backing track. And usually really those only get purchased by people who are like actual fans of my music, not necessarily people just coming to me to learn. Because, of course I have my core audience who are here for there for the music. Maybe then that bleeds over into people who are there to learn as well. But the bulk of people coming are people wanting to learn. So so I would say that most of the $2 and that kind of thing is more just that really only reaches I don't advertise any of that. It really just reaches my audience for my music. But the larger products, I've tried various things like upselling, of course, with that feature on Selfie has been, it's very, very useful, where I have certain products that really do pair well together. They go well together or they complement each other. And so, it's a hard question to answer because there's been different times where, trying to sell a product of this type for $30 or $40 just doesn't work. And I need to drop the prices down. And there's been times where making a product, it's like the best way to go is like a $50 product. And so you kind of have to be cognizant of that. But one thing that I can say that kind of guides me in how I price things is it's just the idea of what is the actual value of what I'm making. So and have that value be consistent throughout the product. So if I have a guitar course, and guitar courses go roughly for $20 or $30, then I have a guitar course that's actually 3 full courses in one package. It's like a 3-part course. Then I can price that based on the price of a single course. So it's like 3 times that amount with a little discount because you're buying all 3. And that's kind of how I've approached it. But I do think it depends on a variety of factors. But there's definitely, I've had success selling, like when I first started, selling very cheap products through advertising, and then upselling them, or in that case, at that time, years ago, using the mailing list to later sell them on a product that's a little bit more expensive. And that was very helpful. I've tried that strategy again, like not too far in the past now, maybe a year or so, and it didn't work. It just didn't pan out, which was interesting. And I think I would have had to have created a course specifically for that purpose. And I think if I had done that, then that would work. Otherwise, I find that I guess my average sale, if you broke everything down, is like $30. That would be like the average sale that comes through, like averaging out all the sales. And so having products that are like around $20, having products up to about $50 seems to be, depending on how well I can market it, how well I can present like what it's going to do for the person, get their attention. If it's really something where I can demonstrate the value, it will pay for itself with the ads and become profitable.
What is the price point that you're advertising, and is the 50% discount in the thumbnail that you mentioned included in that?
Yeah, so I've tried different things. I advertise numerous products now. So and that's one way I've been able to scale up, is just by having what I would call ad-worthy products. Ones that you can direct sales, like you've never heard of me, you've never seen my products, but here's an ad, and people are going to be willing to buy this like cold. Some products aren't like that. People who've used my products will go and buy those other products later, but there are certain products that people will buy them if they're coming across me for the first time, and it's with the right ad video. So those go from about, I think, $20 to, I get, $20 to $50. I think is the products that I advertise are between $20 and $50. Or $19.99 or whatever. It's something like that. So which would make sense why $30 would be like the average. But between that price point is what I've found works best for what I'm doing. But again, like when I first started, my first product I advertised was $4, $3.99 was the price I found that worked. And so the beauty of that was I was able to make a profit doing that, have the ads pay for themselves, but then build up a mailing list of people who are opting in, for future products, and ended up being thousands of people. When you're selling this like super cheap product.
Have you nailed what makes an impulse buy possible? Outside of the price, of course, nobody's going to impulse buy something for $500, but 20, 50 for sure. But what makes the product or the offer so compelling that people who have never heard about you are willing to buy on the spot?
So I think in the case of what I do, because it's so technique oriented with the courses, and the technique is so it's meant to be flashy. It's meant to catch people's attention. It really lends itself well to something like an impulse buy, because you have somebody who's been procrastinating learning the guitar for a long time, or learning this type of technique. Then they see this, and it's like, man, it just reminds them. It's like, this is something I want to do. And it's like, hey, I think there's, my guess would be just trying to get into the kind of imagining the mindset of a buyer, would be that it's like, hey, I need to commit. It's like, I want to do this. I've been putting it off. If I buy this now, then, when I'm feeling this way, I'm going to, maybe not thinking about it that way, but, feeling that way. If I buy this right now, that's going to motivate me to do it. And I think that being able to offer something that people really want and really offer it in a way that shows them they can attain it. I think that if you can really demonstrate that in a way that will give them an emotional response, where they really feel it. They feel that, like, I want this. I want to be able to do this. I think to me that would be my best. I can maybe say educated guess as to what would lead to an impulse buy in that way.
I have to tell you that as a salesperson, I was really impressed by the copy on your sales pages.
Thank you very much.
Have you ever tried to learn it or practice it, or it just comes naturally because of how well you know your product and the value that they bring?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of trial and error. It's a kind of necessity, the mother of invention. I mean, I do write. I mean, I've written things for years, like, and tried to write novels and things that never finished. So I have some experience with writing. I used to read quite a bit in recent years. I've kind of fallen out of the habit, but I think that I think the initial sales copy on any of these products was like, at least on my earlier products, was terrible. It was just terrible. And so it's just a matter of kind of troubleshooting and trial and error, and just realizing, like, hey, this isn't selling, but I put so much time into this. It's such a great product. And then realizing, going and reading the sales copy, and it's like, yeah, this isn't explaining well, or this is written in a way that's like hard to understand, or it's the paragraphs are too long, or there's it's like in kind of looking at what other people are doing, looking at like, okay, they're breaking up. It's like when I send an email to my mailing list, I don't just send a long paragraph. It's like I'm putting dividers and subheadings and having very short paragraphs, sometimes just a single sentence. And from like a writing point of view, it might even look ridiculous, but it allows somewhat, now we're all kind of we don't have the greatest attention spans anymore, right? So, and I think that applies to most people. So it makes it more easy to the person to actually read it and not get lost, or not have like the eye fatigue of trying to keep your spot on text on a screen. And so, yeah, that kind of thing has helped, and just trying to figure out more efficient ways of, and that can be challenging, especially making courses like this, because there's a lot that I'm trying to do with the course that maybe isn't so easy to describe. And so I found that trying to focus more on what the results will be, in maybe spending a little less time on the method or the approach, but I want to include the fact that there's something special about the method or approach. But I think giving that, focusing a little more, I learned to focus a little more on, and I guess that's sales 101, but took me, it took me a while to just figure that out. But yeah, it's doing really focusing more on what their results will be, I think, in the copy, and just trying to segment it in a way that is easy to read and also easy to scan, where you can scan it and get the information that you want. And some of that may be advice from that friend I mentioned earlier. I'm sure it's a little hard to remember now, and a lot of it's trial and error.
Okay, we can credit him, but to be honest, I think you summed up copywriting 101 perfectly. Make it scannable, focus on the benefits. I mean, that's exactly right. All right, let's do a little break section, my favorite quickfire round, right? I'll have a few questions, very short, and I will ask you for very short answers. You can have a longer think about them, but try to give me a short answer, right?
Okay.
All right, are you a team player or lone wolf?
Lone wolf, I'd have to say.
Take risks or carefully calculate?
Carefully calculate.
Mobile or desktop?
Oh, desktop.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Engineering, aircraft engineering or aerospace, I think would be probably my other choice.
What is an underappreciated business tool that you couldn't live without?
There's a few of them, but I will say, and this isn't just a plug, I will say Selfie is that's the top on the list.
Great answer.
Yeah.
And, not even paid for it. Amazing. Yeah. What's your productivity life hack?
It's inconsistent. So it's long periods of time of just doing nothing but working, and then periods of downtime.
And what does success mean to you?
I would feel successful at the point in which I felt that my music was really resonating with people who were really able to appreciate it. Really, that would be, and I don't feel personally that I've achieved that. So, and I will just, as a side note, not to over lengthen the short answer, but that to me, just the money is about giving me the ability to work on the music. So
Hmm.
I'm not too interested in kind of the trappings, I guess, of success or whatever, but more it's helpful because I can get the tools.
Well, I think creative expression is as good a success goal as any, to be honest. Even though I'm a sales guy, I don't necessarily think that it's all about the money, you know?
Right. Oh, sure. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. But I think that really that drives me the most. So and
Mhm.
that maybe a challenge for me on the business side is sometimes I need to be able to focus on the money to grow the business, but oftentimes I need to have some external pressure to get me to focus more on trying to make more money, and that it is a challenge I face. I do think that I'm almost not even slightly tapping the potential of what I've already put together. So something I hope to rectify this year, but we'll see.
You mentioned actually before, so to close up the conversation, let's go back to what you said about YouTube being the plan for the year. So what is the plan or goal, if you have any?
Okay, yeah. So my brother, my older brother, he he wanted to get into something similar to what I do. He's also a great musician. He's professionally he's a programmer right now. Very interesting person. He has a PhD in philosophy, but he's realized he couldn't make enough, to support a family, living in New York at the time, with that. So he switched to programming, something like kind of a pet passion of his previously, and then that was able to do it for him. But he was the one who talked me into getting more into the mailing list and getting more into. I mean, so my friend I mentioned before, named Andrew, he had recommended this years before, and Doug Marks, the creator of Metal Method, that I started doing courses with years ago, he also had recommended this to me. I never followed these
Hmm.
advice, but my brother John is the one who finally convinced me to get into that. So part of the strategy is got me into doing the mailing list several years ago, and not just like a standard mailing list, but using funnels and using kind of automated, so I can write like a great email that's just informational. I'm not trying to sell anything. It's just like every week people can get this email where I'm giving them some idea that I have or some advice, and then not have that email just then be done. But it's like when new customers come in, they start at the beginning, and they can get all these different emails in a sequence. I guess it's in a sequence. And so from there, what obviously the best approach, maybe not obviously, but to people who know the strategy, you want to be able to offer free content to incite people to or entice rather entice people to join your mailing list. To give your mailing list a shot. You get in this case, I'd be offering. I started with the free course originally, which worked great, but for complicated, I won't get into it. I decided not to continue doing that. My strategy is to start teaching short, just techniques or patterns, also from some of my own original music, because there's really long passages of interesting technical guitar stuff that are found in those songs. And one thing is that people who are really into my music will watch the whole video. They'll listen to the whole song. But, most people aren't going to. So they're missing out on a lot of this technique. So to them, it's brand new. It's like if I were to show them a clip from like the third minute of a song that has this particular technique, even if they've been following me for years, they've never seen it. They've never heard it. So my strategy is to try to take some of that material and the things that would be of most interest to the audience and just do short videos every week, teaching that technique, breaking it down, offering the free tab, and then have that be a window. Obviously, they don't need the tab if they, or they could just opt out of the mailing list after they get it. It's not a big deal. But the idea would be the method of getting the tab is through signing up to the mailing list and then an automated message with email with the download link. And so as a customer acquisition method, and then of course keeping the people engaged with the sequence, and which I now have a pretty long sequence. But that's another thing I need to get back to everyone who's gone through the 30 or so emails have now, they're not getting any new emails from me. So I need to get back to that. But so that's kind of the in the realm of just pure business. That's rather not talking about the music side of it. That's kind of my strategy, and in part it allows me to promote the music because the clip this is from this song, so I can show a clip of the song. I can say, hey, this is from my song such and such. And then, and so that's, there's a little side benefit of doing that, but it also adds credibility to anybody who's new who's coming in. But each one of those clips, and it could be formatted for YouTube as well as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and I plan to get into that as well.
Okay.
And each one of those, it offers that opportunity to introduce people to my style of teaching. Every single one, could potentially have some viral activity. So there's always, if you're making all that content and you're making quality content, out to the right audience, then each of those videos has the opportunity to break free from, your own following.
I'm a big proponent of so-called content repurposing, right? You can make a longer video on YouTube and then repurpose it across all the other platforms and formats, like short formats. That's what we're trying to do with the podcast as well. And it's quite amazing to hear, to be honest, that you have had such a success in the business realm without ever doing that. That what you have been doing has been so successful. So there is so much opportunity to grow still unexplored. And I'm looking forward to following your journey and seeing how it goes.
Yeah, I really appreciate that.
And thank you so much for joining and sharing your knowledge with us.
Oh, yeah, I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care now.
Dan has a plan for a new content type and new sales channel. Imagine what he can achieve if he scales his current effort. We will watch out for news from Dan, and you please watch out for our next episode. Until then, see you.